So our first question for tonight goes, Dear Luang Por, Namo Buddhaya. Question 1. When we meditate, how do we know the meditation is good or bad? May I ask how to check the quality of our meditation? Please, could you suggest a few criteria for self-checking? Thank you.
Good question. Well, the first thing is to be doing some meditation regularly. So really, there's no such thing as bad meditation, because, as I said earlier, it's so difficult to get people to meditate. If you're meditating, that's already a victory. That's already a good thing. And even if you're very physically weak, so you're ill or you're depressed or you have a lot of stuff, a lot of stress in your mind, any moment that you put effort into bringing up some mindfulness is a moment of light. It's a moment of success. It's a moment of improvement. Probably one of the problems these days is we all have too much information. So we've heard all about stages of enlightenment and nibbana and stages of levels of samadhi and all kinds of experiences that people have had. So of course we kind of have this desire to want to experience the same. But the reality is, when you start meditation, and when I say start, that could be your whole life, because we're often beginners for many years, you have to manage your expectations. Don't expect too much. The main thing is to be doing the practice, putting effort into being mindful. So your effort level is one thing to observe. Each time you meditate, be honest and say, well, how much did I try today? How hard did I try today? Was I a bit lazy? You know, I was sitting there but letting my mind wander all over the place, or was I just falling asleep? Was I indulging in my favorite fantasy? Or was I really working to establish mindfulness, see things as impermanent, let things go? So every time you do a formal meditation, whether it's sitting or walking, you can review it at the end. You know, what did I do today? How was my effort? Occasionally we try too hard, too much willpower, too much desire, and that also can lead to physical tension, headaches, and stress, discomfort, and mental restlessness and agitation. So sometimes we try too hard, but often we're not trying very hard at all, and we're just kind of putting in the hours. A bit like when you go to work and you don't really try, but you're just collecting the money anyway. A bit like that. So try to be honest and assess your effort when you meditate. Another one is to reflect on, well, what was coming up in your mind, and how well did you deal with it, and how did you deal with it? Did you deal with it at all? Like, you know, if you are experiencing angry, negative mind states, what do you do when they come up? Do you get overwhelmed by them? Do you just keep feeding them, holding on to them? Or are you working to let them go and bring up something else? So it's kind of self-monitoring, self-assessment you have to do in this practice, and it's giving you the tools to do that, because you're starting to pay attention to your own mind. You're learning about yourself. That's why it's so valuable. But you also have to be very patient and accept you're not always going to be wonderfully peaceful or have great, marvelous experiences of bliss and rapture and be very radiant and joyful. Of course, as you practice more, hopefully you do experience some joy. As you let go, you feel more relaxed, more lighter, physically lighter, mentally lighter. These kind of benefits will start to emerge, and you may notice them. But don't cling on to them or expect them, because then you might get disappointed. So Ajahn Chah encouraged that attitude of just do the practice. That's the first thing. Put effort in and just accept. Sometimes you're peaceful, sometimes you're not. And he always compared it to very simple experiences like eating food. You know, you as a monk, you go out on alms round every day, and most days people give you rice and curry and sweets and salads and fruit, you know, a variety of food, and that's nice. You get a nice balanced meal. That's like a day when you meditate and you get some good mindfulness, and you maybe understand a bit how to let go of something. But then as a monk, sometimes you go out and all you get is plain rice. And if all you get is plain rice, you might feel disappointed and say, oh, I only got plain rice today. But plain rice is still food. It may not be the most tastiest food or the most nutritious, but it's still food, and you can survive on plain rice for a day or two. That's like meditating and your mind is just full of moods and thoughts and, oh dear, this is really hard work. No peace at all today. But the thing is, you're still doing it. That's the important point. Just as you're still eating food when you eat plain rice. So whether you've got plain rice or a nice balanced diet with lots of sweets and curries and whatever you like, that's the nature of the mind. That's the nature of meditation. You have these ups and downs, sometimes peaceful, sometimes not. But it's all good because at least you're doing something. You're eating the food of the mind, you might say, of developing mindfulness, putting effort forth. So don't expect too much. Just look more at what kind of effort are you putting in, the quality of your effort. Maybe that's the first thing to look at in your meditation.
Sadhu Luang Por. The next question is about keeping the precepts of not telling a lie. If a person tells a white lie due to compassion or to avoid hurting another's feelings, is it considered breaking the precept? Thank you.
Well, if you're speaking what is not true, then strictly speaking, yes, you're breaking a precept. So you may look into dealing with that situation without actually telling a white lie. You know, every situation is different. I don't know what situation you're referring to here, but depending on the circumstances, sometimes you just keep silent rather than tell an untruth, or sometimes you say part of the truth, or sometimes you say the full truth and accept the fact that in the short term, maybe there may be some bad reaction, but in the long term, you have the satisfaction of knowing you spoke the truth. And sometimes even people come back on you and say, I'm glad you spoke the truth, didn't tell a lie or even a white lie. So often people sort of say, I have to say a white lie. And I always say, well, why? Have you tried telling the truth or keeping silent or solving the problem in some other way where you don't tell a lie? And they often haven't. You know, we often go with the quick way, the simple way, the convenient way, and tell a white lie without having tried anything else. It's the same with all these precepts. You know, people say, oh, I had to kill the fly, or I had to kill the ants in my kitchen. I often ask, well, did you try not killing? And usually they haven't. They just assume they have to do something. And that assuming is just your own thoughts. It's your own idea. Maybe there's another way. So pause before you tell the white lie and say, well, do I really need to say this? Is there any better way of dealing with this problem, saying it differently? You know, give the precepts more of a chance than just sort of say, well, I can't keep them. Because in the long run, you might find that brings more mindfulness, more understanding, more wisdom. And even white lies, if people find out you've been lying, they know you're capable of lying, and then they don't really trust your word. Even if it's a white lie, they say, oh, they can still lie, this person. So it diminishes the trust of other people as well.
Sadhu Luang Por. And another question. I have a friend who has cancer and does not have much time left in the prognosis. I want I know he is unwell and I want him to rest and to respect his wishes. I understand he may be very tired. I am happy to sit beside him and just meditate, even if he is sleeping. I want to ask my friend that I want to see him, but I don't know how to ask. What should I say to ask him that I want to see him?
Well, if it's a friend, it's probably all right just to ask directly and say, I want to see you. And then you can let your friend set the conditions and say, well, for how long, what day, what time, how long. And if your friend doesn't want to speak, you say, well, I just want to go and meditate next to you. You can say that. All of that, I would have thought you can say. And you, with sensitivity, try and, introduce the idea of you going to see them, see what they say, see what the family members or other people around them say. But like you say, maybe all you can do is go and sit and meditate next to them, but that's something very useful. And sometimes it's more useful than talking a lot, because if someone's dying of cancer, whatever you say may not be very satisfying to them. So maybe just meditating on the theme of loving kindness, compassion may be the most useful. If you really can't get in to see them, well, you can always meditate in your own place and just send your thoughts to them. And that's good as well. But I would broach the subject with them, or the person caring for them, just try and see when you can get in to spend some time with them, and be very sensitive not to disturb the patient very much. Just meditate, see what you can do to assist in any way at all. But be careful, because you're right. People do feel disturbed by others visiting them if you were dying, and people come in and are crying and emotional. It's a burden on the person dying. So that's not your aim. Your aim is to be an aid, a support to them. That's why if you do just meditate, that is quite a good thing. If they're Buddhist, sometimes you can chant for them. You can listen to Dhamma with them if they're able to or up to it. There's a few options, and with some sensitivity, you just see what might work, what might help. But be careful not to let your emotions and what you say, put pressure on the person who's dying. Sometimes we say the wrong thing, or we just give them too much emotional burden. So try not to be like that, and try not to do that.
Sadhu. The next question: how does it feel to be a monk and living as a monastic?
Feels very good. Wouldn't have it any other way. What else would I do as a monk? I've been a monk 40 years now, so I'm quite content. Particularly in the early days of being a monk, it's not always easy. You have to make a lot of adjustment from the lay life into the monastic life. Precepts. You require a lot of discipline as a monk. There's a lot of renunciation. You don't have money. You don't have many possessions. Your life is very simple. You have to get up early, one meal a day, all kinds of things. You're celibate, and so on. So at first, that's a bit of an adjustment. You have to be patient with your moods and your desires as they come up. But over time, the joy of meditation, renunciation, helping other people, understanding the Dhamma outweighs any sense of loss of freedom, loss of comfort. And you become wiser. And the whole point is, peace based on wisdom is a very lasting, deep, profound peace that can become quite unshakable. So as a monk, you're developing unshakable qualities of mind, a mind free from doubt, worry, fear, free from sexual desire, free from anger, free from worry, and so on. at first all those mind states come up, but as you practice, you learn how to deal with them with right view, with mindfulness, with insight, and let go. And then your peace and your sense of peace becomes unshakable. Whereas from what I can see in the lay life, your sense of peace, security, happiness is based on a lot of things that are very unstable, unreliable, not sure. And that's why that peace and the happiness of the lay life is easily shattered. So once you realize that, you don't want to go back to the lay life. You'd rather be a monk.
Sadhu Luang Por. Another question. Dear Luang Por, is it true that all Buddhists made merit with the Buddha as a Buddha or when he was a Bodhisattva before?
Well, I think it would be hard to say anything about all Buddhists. Everyone is different and they have different karma, characters, backgrounds, pasts. But generally speaking, if you have faith in Buddhism this life and your faith is fairly strong and continuous, that's a sign you probably had faith in the Buddha and his teachings in a past life. If you're living in a situation where you're living in a country and a place where you're not caught into a war, you have access to the Dhamma, you can make merit, support the Sangha, hear the Dhamma, learn meditation, practice Dhamma. That also is an indication you've probably done it before and you probably met a Buddha before, because that's very powerful, good karma. You have very good circumstances. But to say all Buddhists, well, it's a bit of a generalization, isn't it? There's always going to be someone who's new, isn't there? Somebody who's new to it. But if you really understand samsara and the way we've been born and died for countless lifetimes, so many of those sayings the Buddha made, like we've been related to pretty much everyone we meet at some point. So, brothers, sister, parents, children. We've lived in every place in the world. There's not a place in the world that somebody hasn't lived and died in really in the past. And here we're talking about countless eons, not just, a few thousand years or something. When you look at in terms of samsara, you can see it's probably quite likely you've met a Buddha, been in contact with the Buddhist teachings in the past. But if you can't remember past lives, of course, that's open to speculation as well. And we can waste a lot of time and energy and maybe even delude ourselves, as people do, speculating on who they were in the past and what happened. But as a general observation, I'd say, well, it's quite likely you were with a Buddha in the past. But maybe that should be modified or balanced by the fact that if you met a Buddha in the past and you're still here, that means you didn't get enlightened. Maybe you missed your opportunity. Because if you were born in the time of a Buddha and you had the chance to listen to the Dhamma, practice the Dhamma, but you didn't reach Nibbana because you're here now, and you wouldn't be here now if you'd reached Nibbana, something went wrong. You were lazy. You were distracted. You were doing something you shouldn't have been doing. You went off in the way of the world, or you're too attached to the lay life and the happiness and pleasures of the world, or seeking them out, or whatever. You missed your chance. So that's also a reflection. If you have met the Buddha before and you're here now, you're lucky you can still practice what the Buddha taught, even though the Buddha's passed away. His Dhamma is still here. Well, don't waste your time. Practice as much as possible here and now. Let go of your defilements, greed, anger, and delusion. Let it all go now, so that we don't have to be coming back in a future life in a Zoom session saying, was I born in the time of the Buddha? Have I met a Buddha before? Put an end to it in this lifetime.
Sadhu Luang Por. Are there any further questions from anyone? Please feel free to type a question in the chat box or raise your digital hand. Looks like there's no more questions, Paul.
Okay, well, very nice to talk to you tonight, and wish you all well in your practice. We have a one-day retreat at the monastery tomorrow, beginning 8:30 a.m. Melbourne time. So you can tune into that on Facebook if you're interested, if you're not local, or you could even join us here in the monastery if you are local. Other than that, maybe I will see you next Sunday on Zoom.